Hello and happy Sunday, and welcome to our Pixar Rules of Storytelling live chat. I am very excited as a huge, gigantic Pixar nerd. So I'm very excited for today's chat. I'm interested to see what other people think about Pixar and these different rules of storytelling and everything. So I want us to get us started with asking, what is your favorite and the least favorite Pixar movie? I'm also going to ask you why. So just so you know. Does anyone want to go first?
I have my answer ready.
Perfect, Emma.
Chat. Okay. So my favorite is Cars 3.
Love it. Classic. I was going to say that too.
And I feel like there has to be some subjectiveness when it comes to like picking a favorite Pixar movie, because like there's so many good ones and there's like a bunch that I like love for different reasons. But Cars 3, like one, the story I think is just like fantastic. I love how it like connects back to the first movie's story. It's just really great. And I think it has like a good balance of like sentimental and comedy and all of that. But also like my kid is obsessed with cars. And like I had not ever even seen Cars 3 because like I'd seen the first one and I was like, we all kind of make fun of cars or whatever. And like I think I maybe saw part of the second one and it didn't look great, and so then I just never like paid attention to the third one. So it's got like some sentimental aspect of it for me too, just because I've like watched the movie so much with my son, and I think it's the best of the trilogy. I have heavily analyzed the Cars movies at this point because I've seen them so many times. So that's my favorite. My least favorite, for extremely subjective reasons, is Ratatouille, and it's just because I have a deep fear of rats and mice. So I can't. I've never even finished it. I can't sit through the movie because it just like weirds me out.
That's valid. Did you ride the Ratatouille ride at Disney World?
Yeah, we were talking about that before you got on. I did ride it, and the ride was pretty cool. I think I could handle like 3 minutes of it, but I just can't watch
not a whole movie.
But rats in a kitchen, like it just grosses me out.
That's valid. All right. Does anyone else want to go next?
So I'm feeling pretty good about The Incredibles as my favorite.
It's a good one.
That's just it always makes me happy. I'm a sucker for family dynamic stories and superheroes, so it's just always been a good fit for me. I don't have like a least favorite as in like, can't believe they put this one on. Awful. Finding Dory, I always just felt like, why are we here? Like this you should have just kept track of Dory and we would have been fine. So no actual criticism for it, but yeah.
Did they not learn the first time?
I also like The Incredibles, and I haven't seen it as much, but I have seen Luca, and I liked Luca. That was cute. But I guess for like ones that I don't care for would be WALL-E.
Yes. I agree with that. Everyone always is like, what? You don't like WALL-E? It's beautiful. It's a masterpiece. And I'm like, okay, but it's like not that entertaining. Let's be real.
I had to watch it 4 times before I got through the whole movie without falling asleep.
Yep.
For me, I would have to say agree with The Incredibles, but it's kind of a tie between The Incredibles and I know this one is a Disney Pixar. Brave. Really liked Brave. For least favorite, that would have to be Cars, because all of the Cars movie as a whole, mainly because of one character in particular, which is Mater or whatever his name is. So I just want to punch him in his stupid car.
That's part of why the second movie is terrible, is because it focuses too much on
all Mater. Yeah,
I hate him so much. He's horrible and vile.
That's so funny. As a person who grew up in the South, I can think of at least like 4 different teachers who remind me exactly of Mater.
I believe you. Yeah, I wouldn't want to hang out with
least 4. Megan, did you share yours yet?
I haven't. I had a really hard time picking a favorite. But like going through the list, I think the one that I'm just like, oh yeah, I like a lot of them, but Monsters University really surprised me how much I enjoyed it. Another surprise, I think, is that the second or third Monsters Inc.? It's a prequel, but I can't remember how many Monsters Inc. stories they had.
There's 2 movies and
the show
TV series. Yeah.
Have you seen Monsters at Work?
Oh yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. So good.
But yeah, I thought Monsters University was like funny and fun, and it was like the same characters but fresh. So yeah, I liked that one a lot. I really wanted to love Lightyear.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time I watched it, I just felt like, who is this for? Like, my 4-year-old lost interest in the first 20 minutes. I never felt super captivated. It was like really sad. And like, it's probably my least favorite, but I really wanted to love it. I also didn't understand how it fit into the lore. Like, why would Andy watch that and be like, I want the Buzz toy? It's still a good story. It just,
Yeah. This was a very hard question for me. Like I said, I am a Pixar stan. I very rarely am able to pick favorites. I usually have to pick several movies that are at the same level. So I kind of cheated. I have 2 favorite movies, 2 favorite Pixar movies. I'm going to say Up because as a kid, like I love that movie. It's one of the very few movies we actually had on DVD. We didn't have a lot of DVDs. And of course, this was before streaming. So I loved Up. And then one that I think that no one has said, and I don't think anyone's going to agree with me, it's The Good Dinosaur.
I
love The Good Dinosaur.
Cute.
It's so cute. The animation in general, like from a visual standpoint, it's one of the strongest Pixar movies from a visual standpoint. Which was really cool. It was like the first, I remember seeing like the rain scene and the rain on Arlo's skin has like it had never really been done to that point. So that was amazing, especially as an animation nerd, like high schooler. I loved it. I also love a good found family. I really like that. And I don't know. I like the boy and his dog story, but not How You Think. So that's why I picked those as my favorite.
Joe Catherine said, did not vibe with The Good Dinosaur. I didn't even remember.
I get that.
It was a thing until now.
I understand. It's not everyone's favorite. Honorable mention would also be Inside Out. But that movie makes me cry too hard to be my favorite. So I couldn't pick that. And then least favorite, this was pretty easy for me. As a teenager, it was Brave. I hated Brave with a passion. I was in my princess era. Like I liked the traditional princess stories. And I was like, cool, like we're getting a cool like princess who can do archery and stuff. I'm here for it. But it was not a traditional princess story. And I think I was like 15 or 16 when it came out. I was not happy.
I remember I was in college when I saw it, and I remember being like, wait, this was not marketed to me as not the traditional story.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. It was never marketed as the kind of movie it was. It was marketed as a traditional like princess movie. And I was mad because I spent my $1.50 at Redbox to rent it.
Rude of them.
I know. But also like Toy Story 4 is actually the worst Pixar movie.
I have not seen it.
I say it's one of the
That
three
is
that
why.
I have not watched.
That is
I
why
haven't seen it.
you all haven't seen it, and
I've seen
that
it.
is why.
I saw
Okay.
it.
I love Toy Story 3. I love it with
Yeah.
my whole heart and passion. I
Mhm.
love that movie so much. Toy Story 4
Yeah.
undercut all of the emotion.
And it's just like, why are we here?
Yeah.
Why are we
I
here?
intentionally have not watched it because I refuse to acknowledge that it exists. Because I'm like, no, you finished
Yeah.
the trilogy. We don't need more.
Yeah. I watched it for the first time when I was like recovering from surgery, like in the hospital room. It was on, and I was like, okay, I'll watch this in and out of anesthesia sleep. And I was like, this is not a good movie.
It was not improved by the drugs, huh? That doesn't.
It was
say
not.
good-
It really wasn't.
Say good things about it.
And I like watched it because everyone was like, oh, well, Toy Story 3 is like, that's the end of Andy's story. That's Andy's story. Toy Story 4 is the end of Woody's story. And I was like, you know what? I've been convinced. I'll check it out. It didn't need to happen.
Not good. Okay.
Like
Not
that's
fan.
part of like the moral quandary of Toy Story is that like your toy's life does sort of end when you're and like that was really hard for like Toy Story 3, and it made it really interesting like what happens when he goes, and it's like, oh, they just start over. It's purgatory. Sorry guys.
Oh my God. Jesus. That's kind of dark.
He's just
I
gonna
mean-
go to another girl's room until he falls into tatters.
The dark,
Basically.
the true
It's horrific.
dark end of Toy Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He eternal torment. He can never die.
No.
It just keeps getting stitched back up.
Just like how they keep roping Tom Hanks back in.
Just when he thinks he's out, they pull him back in.
He wakes up. It's like Toy Story 6. He wakes up after being stitched together and is like, no!
Another biopic of a kind white man.
Joe Catherine said in middle school we had our finals by subject, so by Thursday 4 of your classes would be showing either Nemo or Monsters Inc. And like I feel that, yeah, it's always a Pixar movie. When I taught last year during finals, we watched Pixar movies too. I picked Coco though. I got to choose. So we watched
Coco's
Coco, and that
good.
was
Good choice.
I love Coco.
That was on my list of potential faves.
It's a really good one.
It's a beautiful movie.
Luca,
Like,
someone
just-
mentioned before too that I really liked that one as well. Luca.
Yeah.
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 I thought that was like
That was
mid-tier for
also
me.
on my list.
I liked it. I like Silencio Bruno. I tell myself that when I have imposter syndrome.
I think out of the newer Pixar movies, it's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
The newer ones
Yeah.
just haven't been as good.
I really liked Onward, but I wanted it to be so much more than it was. Like
I didn't watch
During
that.
Onward.
I
No,
knew
I
I
haven't
couldn't
seen that
handle
one.
it.
it's Pixar's first take at like a traditional fantasy, and like it's really
Oh.
cute. It does like trigger warning if you like deal with grief or like a parent death, because that's a big part of the movie. So you know that can be really sad, but it was their first look at like a truly like fantasy world, and it just could have been so much more, and it just wasn't. Like it could have been regular humans and the story would have been basically the same, and so that made me mad because the world building could have added a lot more substance to the movie.
That's too bad.
It is too bad. That's a great place to start though, with I have a nice slideshow.
Beautiful.
So is anyone familiar of like the rules of storytelling by Pixar?
No, I'm
I
excited.
Googled
I
it
didn't even
before
look
the
it up.
chat.
I
There
read
are
them
before.
surprised.
There's 22 of them, which I had somehow forgot. I thought there were less. I remember like some of them. And then when I was looking, I was like, oh, there's lots of these, but they're all really, really like helpful and like have some good information. So yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So I have rules number 1 and 2 on the slide. I also have Incredibles characters because
Nice.
every slide has a different movie, because I was a little bit of an overachiever. But rule number 1 is to admire your character for trying more than their successes. And I thought that was really interesting because I think that's true, like, right? Like character depth as a whole, I feel like that's pretty standard.
Its
And
success on
then-
its own is not that interesting.
Exactly, right? I think that also goes into like when we build stakes, when we write, right? Because if your character has nothing to lose, then your reader has nothing to read for, basically. So if your character is only compelling because of their successes, when they inevitably fail at some point during the story, it's your character just isn't likable anymore if you don't give them any depth.
And also, like, if their successes aren't earned, that's not
Yeah.
interesting.
That's very true. Sometimes I feel like the successes aren't earned can Pixar kind of contradicted themselves in a couple movies I can think of, but for the most part, I think Pixar does really, really well with compelling characters. The first character I thought of with admiring a character for more than their success was Riley from Inside Out. I think Riley is a really, really good character to look at for like good character development and growth. Plus, I love her so much. And then rule number 2 is you got to keep in mind what's interesting to you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer.
The writers of Game of Thrones should have read that rule.
sensing some shade for the chat.
Always.
Yes.
I do feel like there's a bit of a difference between like someone who works for Pixar saying I have to write to audience and someone who's not, like a screenplay writer who has no connections and no chance of like breaking in easily.
Yeah.
I feel like you should always keep your audience in mind, but you shouldn't live hard by rule number 2 if you're just trying to survive long enough to break in.
Mhm.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think one thing I like to think of is like your audience will come, right? Like there's gonna be at least one person on this planet that is going to identify with something you've done. It's just statistically speaking, like that will happen. So I agree, like you don't necessarily have to say like, oh, I want this to be like very like approachable for like the average audience. So I can't do anything. I can't break genre norms. I can't do things like that. Because then you're really putting yourself in a box before you've even gotten a chance to get started.
Technically the rule is like keep in mind what's interesting for you as an audience. So if you look at it through an audience lens.
Yeah.
Of like
that's really true.
I think it kind of like reminds me of like the whole like kill your darlings idea too. That like sometimes there are things that that you have in the story just because it was like fun for you or because you really like it, and that like sometimes those things have to go and sometimes they get to stay, you know, and just like keeping that in mind.
I think a lot of the time, at least I think for me, like what's fun to me as an audience is like also what's fun to me as a writer. I guess it can be different, but a lot of the times like you're writing the story you want to see, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
Jennifer Daniels made a good point. They said Ash from Pokemon. That's so true because we watched that child fail for years. For multiple decades, we watched this child fail. And yet we kept coming back. Which I don't know about you guys, if you guys were like ever into Pokemon. The like last episode, I hadn't watched it, but I watched obviously the last episode when he won, and I was so emotional. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. He's done it.
I did not know there was 26 seasons. That's wild.
And Ash is done. Like his story is over. He's not going to be in the show anymore. At least in that capacity. I wouldn't be surprised if like he came back as like a trainer, gym leader, scientist, something. But yeah.
It's wild.
Okay. Rule number 3, trying for theme is important, but you won't see what the story actually is until you're at the end. Now rewrite it. I feel attacked by this rule. There's another rule in here where I read it and I was like, wow, okay, so just at me next time, please. But I actually really like this rule. I know with some like books that talk about like outlining and like plotting your story, they always ask like, what's the theme? Think about the theme. And that can trip a lot of people up. I know it's tripped me up several times because I'm like, I don't really have a theme. I just want to write about kids with superpowers. Like, is that the theme? And then as I'm writing, the theme comes out. I don't know if you guys like agree with that. Have you guys seen that when you are writing?
I always want to be the kind of person who is able to look at a story. I plot a lot. And so I feel like logically I should be able to look at that and be like, this is going to be the theme. But I haven't been able to successfully pluck it out at the start of the writing process yet. Maybe next time.
I think maybe it would be easier to do with short fiction, like with a short story, to go in of like, this is the theme I want to communicate. But with longer work, I find it, again, is something that I come to at the end or like after multiple drafts. And I think it also just points to the fact that when we interpret literature, we're all going to pull out different themes. So like, even though you wrote it, you might not see that a theme is there that someone else sees. So
I think like I've learned through writing multiple books that like if I try to do a theme at first, the story is going to change so drastically anyways that the theme that I started with is not necessarily going to apply at the end or sometimes even partway through, and I'll have to go back and change it anyways. So I think at this point I have learned not to bother trying to find a theme until like rule number 3 says, until it's finished and finish, like maybe second or third draft. And I'm like, okay, this is the cohesive theme that is now, I'm not going to edit this out. So this is this is the story now. So.
I like to know, to me, they seem more like tropes, but I view them as like, oh, it's the trope that's the heart of the story. Like at the heart of it, it's found family. At the heart of it, it's online friends banding together more than your real life friend, or, you know, stuff like that. But those never really feel like a theme. Like, I feel like it always, by the end, it kind of comes down to like, oh, I could find, this is the line that's like, that's the theme. But I don't get that specific until
I think though, well, I think too, like as you develop, like you write more and more books, you find, I guess, tropes you could say, or themes that you usually touch on because they're what's important to you, like found family,
like daddy issues,
or sure, you know, not naming names here, but you know.
Okay, rule number 4 is the Pixar rule that I have heard of before. I think this is a very, very basic insight into how to build a story. So I think of this like, if you are talking to, I think of like a child, basically, something as simple as a child, and saying like, okay, so like how we build a story is like, once upon a time there was a blank. Whatever that is. I've also seen a video of like Pete Docter doing an interview, and he's talked about this rule a lot. And he'll oftentimes like make up a story idea like on the spot using this like structure. So like once upon a time there was, I don't know, a pencil. And every day he wrote letters to make people happy. And then one day he was very angry, so he sent out an angry letter for the first time. And because of that, an old lady got an angry letter. And then because of that, she went on a journey to find this pencil until finally they had to sit down and have a mature conversation about their emotions. Like that.
Sounds very Pixar to me, honestly.
And Griswold said Rule 4 is a simplified version of Dan Harmon's Story Circle, which is a lot like the Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. I agree. Which is why I said this is very like bite-sized, like for someone who's like never written a story, never come up with a story idea. I think rule number 4 is, you know, as good a place of any to start. Yeah. Yes. Now I have to write the story about the disgruntled pencil one day. Maybe I'll write a book called The Very Angry Pencil.
There you go.
Pissed off pencil.
The pissed off pencil. Okay, rule number 5, simplify, focus, combine characters, hop over detours. You'll feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it sets you free. I feel like this is almost 2 rules, like that they've combined into one. You know, like simplify and combining characters. I think pretty much anybody who's ever written a book ever that has side characters has had to do this at some point. Because when you look back and you're like, oh wow, I have 17 side characters. That's a bit excessive. That's a little much. You know, I kind of have to morph them into one. But hopping over detours, what I've started doing recently is what I call unhinged writing, where I just write the scene that I want to write. Like ADHD is so powerful, and my brain is just a crazy place to be. And I, for the life of me, cannot write linearly. Sometimes I can, like I can write maybe the first like 3 chapters of a story. And then I'm like, ooh, you know what? I really want to write the scene where the dragon burns down the village, or I really want to write like the kissing scene in like my new romance book or something like that. So just do it. Like it all comes out in the wash anyway. You gotta
no
redo
one
it
revises chronologic. Like very few people that I know revise start to finish. So why should you have to write it start to finish?
I agree. Unhinged writing for the win.
Yeah.
And then the other one is another character part. What is your character good at, comfortable with? Throw the polar opposite at them. Challenge them. How do they deal? Like, what if my pencil woke up one day and suddenly they were a colored pencil? They can't write letters anymore. How would you deal with something like that? They're good at writing letters. Now they can't. Now they have to do something different with their colors.
Tragedy.
Now they have to draw pictures.
Dun, dun,
And it
dun.
becomes creativity. Will set you free. That's the theme.
Maybe, yes, that's the theme.
It's fun looking at these rules and like trying to break it down with Pixar movies in your head.
Yeah.
For some reason, my brain keeps doing it with Nemo. But like,
Mm-hmm. That's true. Like Marlin, like what is he comfortable with? He's comfortable with staying near his anemone. And so what does he have to do?
And like Lightning McQueen is a great example to have.
Yes,
one because like he's like part of this fast-paced racing world, and he gets like dropped into this like slow-paced, like rural town,
small town life.
Yeah,
it's got to slow down.
Yeah.
Accept life for the things that they are, not the things that he could have. It's beautiful.
Joy and sadness and Inside Out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I love Cars, man. If you don't like Cars, I suggest watching it again, Aaron.
I can't do it.
You haven't seen Cars 3, right?
No.
We're gonna buy your child
Just
something
try
Cars themed. Send him on a hyperfixation.
One thing I really like about Cars 3 is it's like a coming of age story, but like coming of middle age, right? Like when you're trying to find what your place in the world is after you've had the stint in your youth,
When
right?
you're not the hot shot anymore. Yeah.
Right, when you're not the hot shot anymore, you know? So it's kind of cool.
And like becoming the mentor, like the mentee becoming the mentor and everything. Yeah.
Such a beautiful movie.
It really is.
Maybe I'll watch it again tonight, actually.
Des is like queuing it up in the background as we speak.
Side note, I was gonna watch The Meg tonight. I always watch a movie before I go to bed. I like shark movies and I want to see the second one.
Me too.
But now I might have to change my mind. Yeah, I could do a whole chat on shark movies and like adjacent like disaster movies or like monster movies. Oh, that is my Jimmy jam.
Do that? I need to do
yes
because I love those movies. I saw the
so
Meg 2 poster as I was walking by the theater. I'm like, it's so dumb. I can't believe there's a second one.
I know. I was so excited.
So excited. Oh, I love dumb monster movies so much.
They're so good. Thank you for coming to our shark interlude. Anyway. Rule number 7, come up with your ending before you figure out your middle. Seriously, endings are hard. Get yours working up front. I'm bad at endings. I'll be real. I am garbage at figuring out the ending.
That came easily. Like 1.5.
This one seems like an obvious one for me because I usually know where I'm headed before I start writing. The middle is the hard part. Like, how do I keep it interesting to get there? How do I figure out all the pieces I need to make that interesting?
I think there are pantsers though that literally don't know where they're going. They don't know their ending. Yeah. Which is wild to me. That makes me feel a little nauseous thinking about that.
Or sweating.
Yeah. Palms are sweaty.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go.
I was just gonna say, I feel like all my ideas are so like character or premise based that I have to think for a long time before I'm like, you know what, maybe I could end this over here.
Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of stories that come to me with like the idea, like the premise. So like I think of like my story Cosmic Castaways, which is basically a future version of Survivor in space. So like that's a premise. That's like an interesting premise that like really pulls the story through the midpoint. Like I know how Survivor works, so I know how the middle of the book will go. And it's like the end, like when I outline, it'll be like the beginning, like Act 1 will be like thick. It'll be a very thick outline. I'll have everything down. Middle is a little more sparse. I start to get, fewer sentences. By Act 3, like my beat lines are like 3 words, like, and they win, or something happens
and they
figure
lose.
this out later. Yeah, exactly. So the endings are so difficult for me.
I think what really helps me is I'm bad at endings, but I'm good at beginnings, or beginnings are exciting to me. And I almost always have the opening scene. Like that's the first thing that comes into my mind. And I'm really, really big on closing the loop. So like whatever beginning image we start out with like the same sort of image, but it's shifted, or the opposite or parallel image at the end. So I have to figure out how I'm working my way from this first image to the closing image. And it doesn't necessarily tell me what the climax is going to be, but at least I have like some idea of what I'm working towards and can sort of form an ending around that. So that has helped me.
I tell you guys that read my vampire book that I accidentally did a mirror image at the ending. I didn't realize until I got the notes back from like Kyra that it starts and ends at a campfire.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? I mean, sort of.
Very different campfire.
Very different campfire. Ooh, I like that. That's true.
Cyclical storytelling.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I find that really satisfying to read and incredibly satisfying to write as well.
It is really satisfying to read stories that do that. I haven't been able to do that in my own writing. Maybe one day. Like I can do like the closing image I can do, but it's like for Act 3, how do I get from the beginning of Act 3 to right before that closing image? What happens there? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the part that's harder to figure out.
The climax part I have a hard time with. Like
yeah.
Does Pixar want to give us a rule for writing the climax?
Yeah, that would be great.
Andrew said that they feel personally attacked by rule number 7. I feel personally attacked by rule number 8. Number 8 is finish your story. Let it go, even if it's not perfect. In an ideal world, you'll have both, but move on. Do better next time. Wow. Don't tell me to do better next time.
I'm trying my hardest.
Like, I'm trying. Leave me alone.
Yeah, that would seem like apply differently to like writing books than like working with a giant team on a movie pitch. That like,
To me though, like rule number 8 doesn't necessarily mean like to like finish like the book. Like to me that means like finish the story. What happens in the story? I've personally right now I've become accustomed to trash drafting. It's my new favorite thing. I know like draft 0 has been around forever. Like people have used that term. I heard it on TikTok and it just made me feel so much better because like trash is in the name. There's no pressure. There is absolutely zero pressure to be good in a trash draft. No one's ever gonna see it. Not a single living soul except for my eyes will ever see the trash draft. And that kind of that gives me some power back in the writing.
I like that.
Hell yeah. I do think there's value in like only you can know yourself and know if like I need to be spending this time on this book versus I'm just tinkering because I don't know how I'm going to finish it, or I know that I shouldn't finish it and should start something new, and I don't want that to be the case. Like no one can tell you that that's you, but I do think if you ever find yourself in like I'm just tinkering because I don't want to do what I have to do, which is trunk it, then there is something valuable in like just finish it, just get it done so you can put it aside with no regrets, you know?
Yep, that makes sense.
Right, the Ratatouille slide, Emma's favorite slide. Rule number 9, when you're stuck, make a list of what wouldn't happen next. Lots of times, the material to get you unstuck will show up. I thought that was a great tip. I've never done that before.
I haven't either.
I'm absolutely going to try that next time.
I think my brain takes that too literally. Like, it's hard to, like, they wouldn't stop for lunch. They wouldn't have a nap.
An asteroid wouldn't come and destroy the planet. You know, there's a lot there. Or would it? Suddenly your slice of life romance turns into a dystopian novel out of left field.
Fun, it sounds amazing.
Let's knock out rule number 9 and rule number 8.
I think it could apply nicely to something like my character wouldn't do this next. Knowing the person they are, they would not do this thing. I really like that idea. I'm going to try it next time.
the story I'm working on right now, I haven't gotten stuck, which is very weird. But when it does happen, eventually, inevitably, I will do that. Because I think that's really interesting. It also gives you like a deeper thought like into your characters, like who they are. Like what would they do like with their personality, with who they are, with their upbringing and their background. I don't know if anybody else does this. Maybe I'm just a crazy person. When I am coming up with my characters, I like to like go out on a date with them. Like I think about like, oh, like what would they show up in? Like what would they wear? What would we talk about if I asked them these questions? Like I know, like it's like a first like date, like a Tinder date. Like how does that go? Versus like if I'm talking to my characters, I'm like, oh, like so like what do you do for a living? And they're like, oh, like I do this. What do you like to do for fun? Like what do you do on the weekends? They're like, oh, I do this. Like I said, I might just be a crazy person.
No, that's amazing. I like that.
Has very active, imaginative interactions with their characters, like they're real people. But it really helps for fleshing out my characters. I find out a lot about them.
Oh, go on a Tinder date with your character. I really like that. That's amazing.
It's really fun. Sometimes there's like really funny things that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, but they actually would do something like that.
I think it could also, it's funny that you said Tinder, because that made me think like it'd be interesting to like think about what you would put on your character's like Tinder profile. Because like it not only helps you figure out like the character, but also like how they present themselves to people. Because like what you put on your profile, like what do you choose? Like what would they choose?
Would he pose with a fish?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If so, I do not write that character.
Oh my gosh.
Is he a gym bro flexing in the mirror?
The fish unlocked a memory. Side tangent really quick. Me and my friends used to have this drinking game in college where we'd all get on our Tinder profiles, and every time we came across a guy with a fish, we'd have to take a drink. And we lived in Tennessee, so
yeah.
So but it was just really funny. Like we'd just be like, fish. We're like, fish. And drink.
Go fish. That's amazing.
Anyway.
Oh, that's great.
Rule number 10, pull apart the stories you like. What you like in them is a part of what you got to recognize before you can use it. I feel like people naturally do that though when they talk about movies they like, right?
Probably not to the level
Not
that
like we do.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I don't think anyone is like doing it to the level Daz is doing it.
So not everybody like takes like 45 minutes after they watch a piece of media to break it down scene by scene to see what happened in the character trajectory and how the movie's plot was actualized at the end.
Not quite to that level.
Oh, we don't do that. Oh yeah, me neither. I've never done that. No. I more so do that with TV shows, if I'm being honest. I will episodically break them down. Like, how does this fit in with the overall story? What does this look like?
It drives me nuts because I don't want to go that far, even though maybe I would if it was a movie I really enjoyed. But I want to discuss it a bit. So I'll say to Sean after we've seen a movie, what did you think of that one? He'll have two things. He'll say, it was good, or and it drives me crazy.
Like that is the same way. After Barbie, like I just wanted to dissect it. He was giving me nothing.
I want to talk about it. What was mad about it? What did you like about it? Like,
I need
specific. Barbie got into okay, so what did you like about any movie you've ever liked? Please give me something.
Yeah, one word syllable is not an answer.
It also might be because I've written so many papers about movies too. So I've had to break it down and I don't know. It's really interesting though. I love doing that. I love doing character deep dives too.
I will say from like a book perspective, I've been in book clubs where we like read the book and then we come together to discuss it at the end. And then I was a part of a book club where we would read it in chunks. And I felt like that encouraged more discussion because it felt like you had like less that you needed to digest and talk about. So
my ADHD would never allow me to do something like that, but that's amazing. I can read a book in one sitting or not at all. There is no in between.
That is typically my experience as well.
Yeah. Sometimes,
everyone was doing it, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah,
peer
the
pressure
fact that
might
everyone
make
was
me.
doing it, I mean, there were times when I read ahead, but
I think the closest, like once upon a time, we really wanted to do like writing in the margins and sending each other books.
Yeah.
So like getting those like in the moment thoughts.
I have like 3 of those books in my closet, and I don't know what to do with them.
You're hoarding them.
I ended up with 3 of them, and then we stopped doing it. And I was like, I feel bad taking these to like Goodwill or something.
Do it.
Yeah,
I would like to do that again because I actually read now.
Yeah, I think we should just do it with one book instead of sending multiple.
A book we know we like.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the hard part of like we all picked books we hadn't read. And I think all of the books ended up being ones none of us really wanted to read.
Yeah. It's gotta be,
but if you pick something you already know you like, your like thoughts in the margins aren't going to be that, but they won't be that fresh. Like it's kind of
that's okay. You can be like, I always think this at this part, you know, like.
That's true. It would kind of be fun to do a book that we've all read and like we all either love or don't love so much. Like we could do Hunger Games for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes coming out.
That would be fun.
It would be fun. We could do a book we really like and a book we really hate. It could be kind of amusing.
Yeah, but then the book I really hate, someone has to be the first one to read it with no comments. Like that.
I don't know how mean to be.
And it would take
I want
longer to
my name
reread,
too.
I think, if I really hate
That's
it.
true.
Anyways, problem for a different day because it is 49 and we're on rule 11.
Yes, I was like, we're gonna speed run.
We
the rest of
started
this.
8 minutes late, so it's only 41.
All right. Rule number 11, putting it on paper lets you start fixing it. If it stays in your head, a perfect idea, you'll never share it with anyone. Well, that's where I'm safest.
It will live perfect in my head forever. I will know it.
I think it's like Shannon Hale who says like you can't build a sandcastle out of like an empty sandbox. Like you have to get the sand in there first.
In my imaginary sandbox, it's fine.
Yeah,
Thank
I have
you.
plenty of sand in there.
There's so much sand.
Really
Is
good
it Stephen
sand,
King
too.
that goes the other way of like, don't like, if it's worth remembering, you're going to remember it. That's kind of how you sift out some of the garbage.
Okay, Mom. If you forgot it, it must not have been important.
Bullshit. You know the things I have forgotten in my life that are important.
I was going to say that
important.
is such a neurotypical response.
Yeah, no kidding. I call ableism, honestly.
You heard it here first.
All right, rule number 12, discount the first thing that comes to your mind and the second, third, fourth, and fifth. Get the obvious out of the way. Surprise yourself. Not for this unhinged noggin.
Yeah.
I don't know about all the way to the fifth.
Fifth,
I do often end up like discarding parts of like the first idea because it's like there's like the first thing I come up with, and then like once I've had like time to like start exploring the story more, I realize something like that would work even better.
This is where Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I love a documentary like watching the Pixar team actually use all these rules. Like, did you use the fifth thing for real?
Some guy suggested they use the first idea and they took him out back, and I heard a gunshot, but it was probably
Or the fifth idea is just something the woman in the room said first, and it eventually got repeated and used.
Yeah. That's
Barbara's just over in the corner, like I said that first.
I said that 2 days ago.
Nobody's listening to me.
Or if they're like really enforced that someone has a good idea and just like, I'll wait until the first 4 ideas have been presented.
Because these people are sticklers for their rules.
I imagine them in a locked room with like the 22 rules, and it's like, okay, no one's getting out until we're done with this. It's like that was only the fourth idea, Jerry. We need one more.
Get out.
I do really like having a writing group for this, or having like a friend who's willing to listen to the plot, or not going all the way to the fifth idea necessarily, but bringing an idea and you're like, look at this idea that I've worked on, and they're like, that doesn't make sense. And it's like, okay, cool. And it helps you kind of workshop your way to what's really the best thing. I feel like I would drive myself mad if I tried to get to 5 ideas just on my own.
Well, and
I would think they were all garbage by the end.
I don't think it's necessarily discarding the first idea. I think a lot of the time it can be adding to it. Like I remember specifically with The Strange and Deadly Portraits of Bryony Gray, when I came to writers group with it, it was initially like this, what if a girl paints portraits and they come to life and she's in this magical world and there's wizards and magicians, and I think it was Kelly who was like, what if it's just a normal world without the wizards and magicians so that the painting thing is cool instead of mundane? Oh, thank you, Megan.
Aaron's book.
So it wasn't that Kelly was like, no, that's a terrible first idea, move on to the 5th one. It was that he was like, what if we take that idea and we add, or in this case, take away these things? So it was still the first idea. It was just
if we had to go to the 5th idea, it would have been like an undersea book, like
that's completely different.
And I think a good writing friend is someone who can look at that and be like, I see this thing and recognize that that is your strength. I think you'll do this part really well, but let's take this other thing and make it better. Like
exactly. Yeah.
Rule 13. Give your characters opinions. Passive, malleable might seem likable to you as you write, but it's poison to the audience. I mean, yeah, no one really wants to read about a passive character. Maybe a passive character in the first scene that gets thrown out of their, comfort zone. Like a pencil who writes an angry letter.
Is it a passive-aggressive pencil?
Yes.
Passive-aggressive pencil.
I keep trying to stop myself, but my brain still uses Harry Potter as examples for so much of this, and like thinking about how annoying Harry was in book 5 originally, and then looking back, that was my favorite book of like Harry's attitude through all of it really did help the story move forward. Also, when Aaron mentioned what a character wouldn't do, and just going, well, Harry definitely wouldn't tell an adult what was going on.
And then you just know to go the opposite of whatever.
What is the most reckless decision he can make in this moment?
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like this is one that like your mileage might vary on. Like not every character needs to be an archetype or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with the general. Like you should give them some opinions. They should be a person.
Unless that's like their character flaws that they just like agree with everyone. Because I like that actually reminds me of Runaway Bride. Where like the main character, the runaway bride, like one of the things that comes out like as the story progresses is that she realizes like every man she's been engaged to, she's just like taken on his like personality and likes and dislikes. Like she's like, I don't know how I like my eggs because I've always just eaten them the way that the guy I'm with eats them. And so it's like a part of her journey is like gaining her own opinions.
I had friends like that.
Rule number 14. Why must you tell this story? What is the belief burning within you that your story feeds off of? That's the heart of it.
That's what will hurt me in the end. I don't know. There's so many stories. If I can't choose one, I will write none, I guess. But,
yeah. I think a better question might be, what is it about this story that's exciting to you, right?
Yeah.
Other than like, because the way they say, why must you tell this story, makes it sound like you have like some kind of like holy mission to write this story.
I must tell this one because my last one died in the query tragedy. So I gotta come up with something new.
Yeah, Misty had a really good point of like it harkens back to the theme question, which I think is why it's hanging me up a little bit of like, what's the belief burning within you that the story feeds off of? So that question is, what is the theme? But I'm not supposed to know that yet.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think that the wrong word is emphasized in this rule. I think it should be, why must you tell this story? Like, why do you feel like you should tell this story? That's how I interpret it, at least. Like, I mean, I'll think of like Cosmic Castaways. I went through a huge Survivor kick. Like I've seen every single season multiple times. And I like space, and I haven't really seen a like reality show set in like space type of story, and that's cool. And I had all these ideas of like I should do other reality show concepts set in different locales, like The Bachelor, but like in medieval times or like something like that.
Yes.
But not actually The Bachelor, probably something closer to like Love Island or Too Hot to Handle, something trashier.
I'm watching Too Hot to Handle right now.
Yes. Or like a 90-day fiance set like in a dystopian like hellscape. Like they're trying to get out of their like faction, and they can only do it through this process. Like,
Oh my god.
Yes, I have a reality show themed idea that whenever it's time to write it, I want to brainstorm with you specifically. Because you
I
know
watch
reality TV.
so much reality TV. It's great. It's a great thing to turn your brain off to.
I think like I get number 14, but I also, I have a couple of different problems with the way they word it. Cause like the belief burning inside you type of thing, like sometimes the story can just be fun to you. Like it doesn't have to be, like I said, your holy grail. This is the one true story I was destined to tell. Because that feels like it puts a huge amount of pressure on you, or like this story has to change people's lives. It'd be awesome if it did, but like it doesn't have to.
I also feel like it opens you up to the pitfall of like, okay, you're partway through a story, but then your next idea sounds like the story you have to write instead.
Right.
Yeah. So it's harder to like.
But I do think it can also be helpful when you're getting distracted to like be able to remind yourself of like, why did I want to tell this?
For sure. Yeah.
Story about
For sure.
And I do think it can help with like, I think a lot of writers at some point in their like journey, especially if you're wanting to become traditionally published, like you reach that point of like, what's the book that's the most marketable? What's going to get me an agent? What's going to get me sales? And like sometimes that book can just like be like dead on arrival because like you aren't actually passionate about it, or you aren't actually excited about it. So just like thinking about like, why do you want to write this story? What are you excited about? And that can help you like keep going throughout the process.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
My burning belief is just putting hot people in hellish situations. What I'm passionate about.
You're passionate.
So what you're saying is you need to write a Too Hot to Handle set in the demon world. Hot people in a hellscape. Yeah, it writes itself. It writes itself.
I want a cooking competition set in like the demon world. That would be fun.
Oh my god, so many jokes are writing themselves. Like
the ovens all just run too hot.
Oh my gosh, the cooking show in hell, and their dish is ice cream or gelato.
Oh my god.
Baked Alaska.
What is I don't know enough about cooking to like make these jokes, but what is the dish where it's literally on fire?
The Baked Alaska.
Baked Alaska.
But there's another one, flambe or something.
Or something
Flambe.
Julienne or Cherry's Jubilee is another one.
Yeah. You just have all those all the time.
All of them, yes. All right. Rule number 15. If you were your character in this situation, how would you feel? Honesty lends credibility to unbelievable situations.
I think it can work if you are similar to your character that you're writing, but if it's someone who's very different from you, then maybe thinking about people that you know that are similar to them.
But if you think there's like core emotions of like loss or
true,
like,
I don't do this because I'm terrified of doing an accidental self-insert. Like, because I hate reading stories where I'm like, this feels like a self-insert. That comes from my copious amounts of fan fiction days. So like, I'm terrified of writing a character that seems too similar to me. So I don't do that at all.
Dad, you guys do this? I'm not sure if I do.
I don't know if I so much think of it as like if it was me, but I do think sometimes I have to like stop and think like, am I having the character like react in this way because it's like how they would react, or is it because like I need them to react this way to like move the story forward, you know?
Yeah. If I don't know where to go, I'm almost always like, okay, now I'm Alex. I'm not me. This is what I would do. I'm Alex. What would Alex do? You know?
Yeah, for sure. I do that too. I'm like, okay, I am my character.
Yeah.
What would they do? the Tinder date helps in the beginning because you're like, I know some more about them. I kind of understand how they would react in a situation.
Yeah.
Rule 16, finish your story. Let go even if it's not perfect. In an ideal world, wait
a minute.
Yeah, this is the same one.
Oh, it's they're
Read a little further down.
under. Yeah, never mind. See, it was a test. It was a test.
You're paying attention.
You're all paying attention. What are the stakes? Give us a reason to root for the character. What happens if they don't succeed? Stack the odds.
I agree.
Yeah.
I
I like a lot of stakes personally. If there's not anything to like root for, if you're like, man, if they don't reach this would be really, really bad, then like what's the purpose of like continuing to read? And they don't have to be like external stakes either. Like that's what I'm like learning as I, continue to write. Like internal stakes like count too. Like they can be just as big and just as devastating as external stakes.
Yeah, I think this is one of those rules that like when you have been writing for a while, like all of us, like it's like one of those like, oh duh, but I know, but like when you're like just kind of getting started writing, it's like one of those things you really do have to learn that like there do have to be like reasons to care about the story.
I'm a big fan too of considering not just the stakes for like your primary POV character, but like what are the stakes for the major side characters or your secondary POVs, and like can you kind of pit their stakes against each other, even if they're friends? Like could a misunderstanding lead to one person doing something, not realizing that they're totally screwing over their friend because they don't realize that that's their friend's stakes. I really like when things stack like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like something a little bit similar because like I guess motivation is often attached to stakes, and like I do like examining the motivation for my side characters, and often if that comes into conflict with the main character's motivation, like Megan said, it can make for way more interesting situations because they're gonna inevitably either work against each other or end up butting heads, and usually both. So it makes things way more interesting, and also giving them the results. Right? Like at the end, are the side characters getting what they're trying to do, or is it ending in disaster for them? How's that affecting the plot? Yeah, it just makes things more complicated and interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Misty Kate also noted adding a ticking clock helps.
Yes.
Big fan of a ticking clock in a book.
I think of Six of Crows whenever I think of like a ticking clock because it's done so well. I was going to say, like, you should also be careful with your stakes, like not getting too ridiculous for your story. The thing that comes to mind for me is Manifest. I was a huge Manifest fan. And by season 3, it just becomes unhinged. I don't know if anybody has seen it.
I didn't make it that far.
I've seen that for season 2, I think.
Oh, okay. If you don't care about spoilers, we could talk about the ending in the post chat.
Okay.
I have.
Sure, yeah.
I was like a Manifest stan. I actually watched it when it was still on TV. I was a Stanifest. I loved it. Stanifest forever.
Is it over then? Like there's
it is. It's done.
Okay.
But I've seen the first season like probably 6 or 7 times because I think it's one of the best like
it was good. Yeah.
opening seasons of any show I've ever seen. Yeah. It's so good. It's very concise. It tells the story for where it needs to go. But then they lose sight. They really do lose sight of what they were trying to do. So be careful with your
that happens a lot.
Be careful with your stakes. Yes.
Right.
Joe Catherine said, I like my steaks well done. I think that's hilarious.
Very good. I gotta say, you need a Buffy joke too. Like you like your steaks and vampires.
Yes. All right, rule number 17, no work is ever wasted. If it's not working, let go and move on. It'll come back around to be useful later. I aggressively believe in this.
Say it again.
I
agree.
As a habitual non-finisher, has that hurt, my writing trajectory? Yeah, probably a little bit. But do I think I have a much better grasp on storytelling and character development than I would have if I had just never done it in the first place? Absolutely. So there's so many themes like of stories that I wrote that I'm like, this isn't working, that I've brought back, or character traits that I've brought back. And I'm like, it didn't work in this story, but you know what? It really works in this story.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I borrow stuff all the time from my like manuscripts that are in a drawer and will never see the light of day. You just like pick at them and steal stuff.
Rule number 18 says you have to know yourself, the difference between doing your best and fussing. Right? Is that what it says? Okay, I can't read. There's a little thing above it where I can't see. Anyway, story is testing, not refining.
That's interesting.
Are you making the book better, or are you just making changes to make changes?
That's between me and my demons. I'll never tell.
This is such an interesting one.
It is. Sorry, I moved on. I can go back.
Yes,
we're close. We have 2 slides left. We have this one and the next one. Rule number 19, coincidences to get characters into trouble are great. Coincidences to get them out of trouble are cheating.
Yeah.
I get that. I think of like the miscommunication trope. Imagine the reverse, right? Like instead of like it leading to chaos, imagine if there's a miscommunication and it like just fixes everything.
Oh, you didn't want me to kill them? Oh, okay.
I would love that in like the fun and games section of the book.
Yeah, the villain just forgets to pick up the poison or something. Like, oh, that's fine then.
You think it's an action and you realize it's an enemies to lovers situation, you know?
Rule number 20 is the opposite of a few rules back. Take the building blocks of a movie you dislike. How would you rearrange them into something you do like?
Oh,
I feel like we
So
do this
now
a
we're
lot.
now we're analyzing
like fake
things we don't
stories.
like.
Yeah, I think about this when I don't like the ending of something. Yeah.
Oh man, I did this whole thing when Game of Thrones ended. Like I rewrote, like, I mean, not actually, but like I did bullet points of how I would do the last season. So
I would like you to write that fanfic, please.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Okay.
isn't rule number 20 just fan fiction?
yes.
Yeah.
I remember the first NaNoWriMo I ever signed up for, like 11 years ago now? It was because I read a book that I hated so much. And I had already been like thinking about it, but then I read that book and I was like, we're doing this. I can do this better. I could not do that better. No, but
I feel like this one, like coming from having watched a lot of media and read a lot of books, I could be almost a little annoying with it, like watching stuff. If like if the story beat falls off, I'll just be like, oh no, it should have done this, this, and this. That was the clear trajectory the story was on. And then that's just like, none of this makes any sense to me. But like you watch enough things and you just understand how the story beats are supposed to go.
Yeah.
And just see when
So
it falls
true.
off the rails of like, how did nobody in a writer's room catch this? It just seems very obvious.
One of my least. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I had kind of almost an opposite experience when I watched the newest Top Gun. I was just like in rapture about how the plot all played out, and Sean had to listen to me like all the way from the movie theater to the car, being like, "Oh my god!" Like the plot arc, and they hit every beat perfectly, and it was so perfect. And he's just like, "What the fuck are you going on about?"
He's like, planes go fast, raw.
I'm like, they hit all the beats, and he's like, "What beats?"
I thought this was propaganda.
I'm so confused.
Yeah, that is the cool side, like opposite of that, of like knowing all those beats and like
knowing
seeing
when
it go wrong is annoying, but like when something goes so nicely and you didn't see it coming and just like, but they still foreshadowed it properly.
Yeah,
that
like the
best
pinnacle of storytelling.
Yes. I was gonna say what makes me really mad in stories is when stories, I particularly think of movies that do this, where they'll introduce like a plot point, even if it's something minor, and then it never like comes back, like it never like comes back around, and you think like, oh, this is the smoking gun, like this is what we're supposed to be paying attention to, and then it just doesn't. And I was thinking about back to like my first ever experienced like working like with film and like in the film industry when I was in a program in high school. And my teacher said, never put anything on the screen that isn't important. If you're like, I had like a shot of like, I wanted to do like a shot of like some keys or something for a short film I was working on. And he was like, if those keys aren't coming back, don't put it in the movie. And I've kept that with me for a long time. Like if it's not, I mean, it just boils down to if it's not important, don't show it.
Yeah.
But I can think of several times where there's been something where it's like, oh, look over here, and then it never comes back.
Oh,
I mean, everything about Rule 20 is making me mad about Game of Thrones again. So.
Well, especially with TV, I think the problem is often when they do show the keys, they are meant to come back, but things get rewritten or the scene gets canceled.
Someone else is writing it, or
someone else is writing it. They don't know about the keys. They don't care about the keys. So it's like you're picking up on these things, but things are changing in the writing room, and then you're just left frustrated and like.
It's based on a book series that hasn't finished, so you don't have all the keys.
It makes me think about, I'm sorry, I can't remember the user name, but someone on Twitter this week was talking about how it really seemed like James Gunn intended Guardians 3 to be the first time that Peter was ever back on Earth. And that like it seems really obvious that he wrote it that way, but that, you know, the Endgame Infinity War people just kind of tossed him back there and didn't make any fanfare of it.
Yeah. And then as a viewer, you're like, wait, what?
You're like, wait.
Yeah. I remember
and so you could see the disconnect between the writers.
There was a period in, what was it? It was in Jurassic World. The one with Chris Pratt, where it was the two little boys. It was so obvious there was a whole like little subplot line with the younger boy. I can't even remember what it was anymore, but it was like a very specific reference to like, do you have something in your pocket, his inhaler or something? And I remember watching it and being like, well, that's like the gun on the wall. That's going to come into play later, right? And then there was nothing. They just, and they made such a point of it that I was like, that was absolutely a scene that they took out later, and that little bit is just still in there. And I was like, what happened to the inhaler or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Misty Cake says a lot of writers' rooms need a story Bible, and like really just like get a nerd in the room. Like just let someone who is passionate about the story tell you what the problems are.
Someone who's passionate and doesn't care about like making you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was what the Sookie Stackhouse author did. Like Charlene Harris, I think.
Yeah.
She just literally hired a fan because after like she was 12 or 13 books in, she wasn't keeping track of this stuff anymore. So she would run it past like a super fan and be like, what if I put this in? And they'd be like, well, no, because you directly contradicted yourself in book 8 or whatever, right? Because there's such a
job.
Yeah, amazing job.
Best job.
Yeah.
But that's why these things are so frustrating, because there are so many people who are so good at fixing these kind of problems in their head for free that would give you their opinions for free. And just nope.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Last slide. Rule number 21. You got to identify with your situation and characters. Can't just write cool. What would make you act that way?
Who says I can't just write cool?
I'm cool. So.
Yeah.
Rude.
I see what they're saying
rule.
about like
Yeah.
3-dimensional characters. Yeah. I'll allow it.
I think what they really mean is like your character has to be able to be identified with, right? Like I think of that makes me think of The Good Place in like the last season when like Chuck writes the book in The Good Place, and it's like the worst book ever because he solves the mystery on like page 3 and he's just like awful to everybody, right? No one is going to identify with that character who is like racist and misogynistic and, you know, all these things.
I think there also can maybe be a temptation to like write some, like sometimes we want to write characters that are like us, and sometimes we want to write characters that are like completely opposite of us. And I think like it can maybe, if you're doing that, it can be valuable to like do some introspection and think about like, is that person who's opposite of me actually that different? Like, I think it can be easy to like see somebody who's different from you and be like, clearly they see everything in a different way than I do. And it's like, well, they might have insecurities too, you know, like, be like, oh, that's the cool person. They're so confident about everything. Yeah. but like, are they
And, like,
actually? You know,
This rule probably feels less like universal. Like, I definitely prefer these kind of stories, but how much of dude media books is just, what if we make them cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to like the really broad spectrum, like the hierarchy of needs type of thing. Like, I want respect in a different way that dude Joe Smo or whatever wants respect in the action movie he's in, but it still boils down to we want the same thing, just in different ways. We have different ways of going about it. So he could do something in his quest that I say I would never in a million years do that, but he's still doing it for the same reasons I would do it a different
But I'm
way.
thinking like James Bond, of like his motivations are just never quite that deep.
No,
Like,
no,
it's
they're
just
not. No.
it's just cool.
yeah.
And I think that's part of the genre expectation for
Yeah,
like a
for
James Bond
sure.
type of film.
Where
I
the
was
type of
like-
stories Pixar's telling, the characters
Yeah.
do need to be
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
true.
I
Yeah.
was thinking too about like the Chekhov's gun situation and how in like a mystery, like Knives Out, like
You have to have
it
red
is
herrings.
full of things that are gonna not come back,
True.
you know? And
Yeah.
so there are some where the genre negates the rule a little bit.
True,
Yeah.
true.
Right.
Always
I feel like something like
exceptions.
that needs to be intentional though, right? Like you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
like accidental your way into that because you're
Oh,
gonna get
yeah.
a messy story.
Oh, for
But if
sure.
you're like, my goal is to like turn the genre on its head, if that's like what you're trying to do, then I think I could definitely work.
Mhm.
Now my brain is just going, my Ken's job is cool.
Being cool. That's it.
Okay, last rule, rule 22. What's the essence of your story? Most economical telling of it. If you know that, you can build out from there.
Do you feel like Pixar could have done a more economical telling of these rules?
Absolutely. I was like, why do we have 22? We probably could have
Yeah.
done this in about 15.
It's like
Like,
the
Yeah.
last few started to like
Andrew
repeat
also said
concepts.
that in
Yeah.
the comments.
yes.
Take
Where's
your own
the
advice.
conciseness?
Yeah.
Take your own advice, Pixar.
Pixar should
I do
pay
really
us.
like this rule though. Like,
yeah, I do too.
I wish, like, I almost wish I could go back into the stories I've written before and do that and like see what I end up with of like what is that core of each of these stories. I feel like knowing that would be valuable.
Yeah, Andrew says,
Yeah.
are we back to the heart of the story, i.e., the theme?
Oh, Andrew as
What
well,
we're
yeah.
looking for. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, but like rule 22, like, I feel like it's talking about like, don't put it there if it doesn't matter. Again, just like, you know, rules before. I think that's like something that a lot of like new writers or like people who aren't used to storytelling, it is a lesson that's important. Like when I think back to like the things I wrote when I was like 11 and 12, like I did not need to write my main character waking up, eating breakfast, getting dressed, and like going on the ride to school when the first thing happens at school.
I extensively detailed every outfit they
Every
wore.
outfit.
Yep.
I feel like for me, this rule is like, I'm taking it as like the elevator pitch, but for the story and not like the exciting side of it, but like what is the elevator pitch for the heart of the story you're trying to tell? Like, so not the theme, but like how would you concisely tell the
Briefly
story?
describe the plot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not every story is going to need to have like that flawless elevator pitch that would do great on a Twitter pitch event in 2016. But like, I do think you should be able to describe it in at least a few sentences. If you can't boil it down to a few sentences, then it's like maybe you have a little too much going on.
It's still
Very
so
true.
hard. I literally still have points where I'm at Indigo and people are like, what's your book about? And I'm like, let me think about this.
So we've run kind of over, but I do think this rule kind of goes really nicely into the preview of like the game Des has planned.
Yes.
So
In 2 weeks, right?
Yes, in 2 weeks. I don't have a slide for it, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I spent all my time downloading pictures of Pixar characters for the slideshow. I was like, each slide obviously has to be a different movie. No, it did not. But, you know, I hope you enjoyed the visuals.
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
So in 2 weeks, we're going to have a game night, which is going to be Poorly Explained Plots, the game, which is, you know, plot lines that are poorly explained. I wasn't super prepared on this, but like there were a couple that I thought were really funny. So like one would be like a circus comes to town and helps fight oppression.
Greatest Showman?
A Bug's Life.
Bug's Life.
Oh.
That was from my childhood favorite Pixar movie. Was A Bug's Life.
There's one that's like a dysfunctional family has a midlife crisis and becomes functional.
Incredible.
Yes.
Nice. I can tell I'm going to be so bad at this.
Yeah.
An attempted murder attempt goes awry and ends up becoming best friends.
Why am I blanking on like anything containing murder from a Pixar movie?
Attempted murder.
Still feels pretty dark.
I don't know. This is Pixar?
It is.
Attempted
Oh,
murder.
Toy Story. It's Toy Story.
It is. It's Toy Story.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Hold on. Oh, I forgot I had this one. The greatest love story never told.
Up?
Nope.
Oh.
That's a good guess.
Hmm.
Coco?
Nope.
Is it Wall-E?
It is.
Ah!
They don't talk.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So there's a couple of examples of kind of what to expect in 2 weeks. There won't just be like Pixar movies. I'll have like a bunch of different movies. Like one that I thought was really funny that I'll give a spoiler for. It's not a Pixar movie. It's a janitor teaches local teens to believe in their dreams.
That feels familiar.
Good Will Hunting? No. Hmm.
Nothing.
You're
I've
gonna have
never
to tell
seen a
us.
film in my life.
All right, do you guys give up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
I haven't seen that.
That's so good.
Incredible.
They do believe in their dreams. I'm just, you know.
Oh my god, that's so good.
So we're gonna do that in 2 weeks. I'm trying to decide if I want to do like find like a app that has like a buzzer so like people like even the audience can play and like can buzz in. And if I can't do that, then I'm just gonna do a Kahoot. That way people in the audience can play against us.
Nice.
Yes. I will have
Excellent.
like do you guys like just like the tagline or do you guys want like a few choices to pick from?
I think just the tagline.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. Because I was like trying to think of it, but I was like, I feel like it would give it away if you had
Yeah.
a bunch of choices.
I feel like we need a tagline and maybe like some other like context clue.
Like a Jeopardy style. Like it's a
Yeah.
TV show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I could do
It could be
that.
like type or genre or like the year it came out, just like one or like the decade it came out.
One
Just, like, one like
hint.
context clue.
Okay, I can definitely do that. I will.
Maybe
have.
not genre though, because then you like start to give
Yeah.
away like the Nightmare on Elm Street.
I think it
thing.
would depend on like the
On the
Yeah,
I can say like
What's
it's a
the
movie.
appropriate-
yeah.
It's an older
Yeah.
movie.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, so next week will be our Nerd In, and then the week after that will be Poorly Explained Plot Lines, the game. I kind of want to do a prize for it, so whoever wins might get something crocheted from me because I like prizes. I think it makes people more invested, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Before we jump off, I just want to answer Ingersoll's question because yes, that was exactly what I was doing. But it's not my jacket. I'm making one for my nephew to match my jacket. Mine has cooler stuff, but he's 5, so we got some like Nintendo
Oh, that's
stuff.
so
Got
cute.
little Spider-Man. Where's the camera?
Cute.
And then this one is going to go on mine next time I am working on it. So
I love it.
Cute.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming to our Pixar Rules of Storytelling night. I don't know about you guys, but I had a great time. It's always really fun to talk in depth about something like this. So we will see you guys next week with our Nerd-In, and we hope that you guys come and be productive with us. Bye.
Bye.